Welcome back to the Paranormal Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. Today's guest has been researching the paranormal for over 4 decades. His dedication to the search for answers is inspiring. In those 40 plus years, he has been to some beyond haunted places. He's seen and heard some things. He's experimented. He's tested theories. And he has graciously accepted my invitation to come on the show and share his experience with my audience. Paranormal researcher, investigator, and author Richard Palmisano joins us today, following this word from our sponsor. Fantasy football champs, our friends at Manscaped want to congratulate you on making it to the 2024 playoffs. As for the rest, well, the fantasy gods have spoken, and it is time to shave off that didn't-make-the-cut playoff beard. No more hiding behind facial hair. Embrace the clean slate with Manscaped's Beard Hedger, because nothing should be as unruly as your failed trade strategies. Embrace victory and join the 10 million men who trust Manscaped with our special offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code PNG for 20% off plus free shipping. Manscaped is the ultimate franchise player that will take your face right into the end zone with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. It is easier than ever. It is easier than you think to craft your own signature look in the new year. Your strategies may have failed you, but this is an easy win, brothers. The Beard Hedger is cordless, waterproof, and gives you 20 different lengths with just one guard. Boop. You just adjust the dial to the length of your choice and touchdown, buddies. Upgrade your routine and indulge in luxury with the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. It comes with specially crafted formulations such as the beard shampoo and conditioner, oil, balm, and as a bonus, Manscaped throws in the winning touch for your finishing touch with the beard brush, comb, and scissors. My modern beardly brethren, this is not your grandpappy's shave of years past. This right here is a premium beard sculpting machine. Rawr. Get ready for the fantasy football offseason like a true grooming champion, and get 20% off and free shipping with our code PNG at manscaped.com. That is 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com by using our code PNG. With the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, you're not just shaping your beard, you're crafting that winning look. Richard Palmisano is the author of numerous books covering some of the many hauntings he has investigated and cases he has taken over the years. His novels have been the basis for several documentaries airing on channels like Discovery and A&E. He also established a team of investigators known as the Searcher Group out of Ontario, Canada in 1979. The members of this group are a dedicated bunch who are extremely active in the study of parapsychology and work to provide community support via investigations free of charge to Ontario residents and business owners having difficulty with their haunted locations. The Searcher Group's intention is not on ridding locations of their spirits. They investigate thoroughly and sincerely using many different methods in order to confirm whether a haunting truly is taking place. If so, who is doing it, reasons why the haunting may be so severe, and then they offer resolutions so that the living and the dead may coexist peacefully. Please enjoy my conversation with Richard Palmisano.
I guess this all started back when I was a child. I was raised in a haunted house. I remember hearing those noises and the shadows and whispers. As much as it scared me, it piqued my curiosity. So when I turned 18, I started the Searcher Group. It's back in 1979. And so it's been about almost 45 years. And Searcher Group is evolved over time, as things did. And I've written 5 books published. One's coming. One's on the way. Um,
Ooh.
I've did some documentaries. I'm also a theorist. So I like to take old theory and see if it actually works. Take it into the field and apply it and see if it actually works. Because I find a lot of them, these old theories aren't worth the paper they're written on. It's like trying to hammer in a square peg in a round hole. And I also write new theory based on other people's experiences, my experiences, field work. So I look at trends and I look at what happens and how it happens, and then I write theory on it. And I'm hoping that, when I get these theories out, that people actually run with them and go take them out and try them themselves. And that's the only way we make progress. You come up with a theory, it's either good or it's bad. And
Right.
I wrote it, so I think it's good, but it may not be. So I want people to try it and see if it works. And if it works and they can apply it, then maybe we're making some advancements. I like to
Yeah.
do lectures. I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think we got a little pause in there. Please continue.
Yeah, so I like to do lectures as well. I like to, pass on as much information as I can to people that are interested. A lot of people are interested in this field, and sometimes they get hooked up on a mystery or a problem they can't solve. And if I can help, I like helping. So I'm not to say that I know everything. I certainly just scratching the surface, as we all are. We're just learning as much as we can. We're nowhere near close to solving this mystery,
Right.
which keeps me involved. If we got rid of this mystery, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say about your theories, and you do get to see some of these in action in your books, which is outstanding. Like you don't just sit around and theorize, you actually put boots to ground. You take these theories and you try them out, and they either work or they don't. But I just think that's so incredible. And you've got some great ideas, just fantastic ideas that I just didn't really think about. In fact, there was one specifically I'm going to ask you about a little bit later, if you're able to talk about it, just to get to the nitty gritty of it. But first, for anyone who is not
Sure.
familiar with the Searcher group, I want to kind of introduce them to this outstanding team. Are you guys are still active today? Yes.
We are. We are. Logistic wise, it's difficult because I'm living a couple hours away from the team. So, for example, there was an investigation last night. I just couldn't attend because of logistics, but I had the team go out. It was a call for help. Lady needs some help, so my brother does this with me as well, and my assistant director Peter, and another team member James. So they went, and I got the report this morning of what was going on. And, so sometimes logistically, I just can't attend because of the distance I live, but we have perfectly good ghosts out this way too. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, no, they're everywhere. Um,
Yeah.
well, what do you guys find that you specialize in any one area of hauntings?
Uh, well, I prefer to work in privately owned or government owned buildings that aren't being used, as
Hmm.
opposed to going out to calls of help. Calls of help are, you have privacy issues. You're using surveillance equipment in somebody's home. Sometimes they don't, they're hooked up on the TV thing, the end of it. So they think that it's okay to bring friends and family to watch us work. And that just pollutes the whole area. You're trying to get EVP and stuff, communication, and people are watching
Yeah.
Jeopardy in the background. So I try to, I like places that are reportedly haunted that are pretty much empty. Old
Hmm.
buildings that the government owns or people own and they haven't used in years. And
Right.
that's what I like to do. I like to get in there because, you know, you don't have people looking over your shoulder. You can set up surveillance equipment, audio, video, all kinds of equipment. And you can really go to work on it. And you don't really have that timeline crunch. You know, we're going to be in and out in a certain time. So that's what I prefer to do. And finding those places are difficult, but not impossible.
Right. Well, yeah, and that allows you to do something that I haven't seen a lot of other teams do. It's kind of in contrast to what a lot of other teams do. People's they're in and out. It's kind of one done, thank you, ma'am, whatever. But
Yeah,
you guys do multiple return visits,
yeah,
and in this way, especially in like the investigations that you did in Ghosts and Overshadows, you were able to better piece together these people's identities
right.
and their histories, and you
Yeah,
don't really think about it, but you have to kind of be able to have like this extended relationship
you do,
with.
you do, and
Yeah, yeah.
you have to develop that relationship over time.
Hmm.
Um, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time. It's we're not thrill seekers where I find a haunted location, I'm getting good stuff, and then off to the next, because that's not how it works.
Right.
If you find a haunted place, you're getting activity. You stay on it as long as you can. Overshadows was 6 years. It took me 6 years to get through that. And Ghosts down in Mississauga, that was a 3 year investigation. The
Wow.
city of Mississauga was nice enough to sign that property over to me for 3 years. You know, carte blanche. Go call security, and they'll let you in anytime you want.
Hmm.
And that was from a job I did for the city. They asked me to catalog their ghosts because they own a lot of vacant properties and museums. So we did a 10-month project looking at all their different buildings and giving a report on what was haunted, what was not haunted. We worked very closely with the corporate security for the city because a lot of them were afraid to go into certain buildings. So we showed them that, it's nothing to be afraid of. You just go in, you're doing your job, you check the building. And I can do that report because I also, my other entity is, I worked almost 40 years within security and law enforcement, so I can speak their language and I understand what they're going through because I've worked a lot of haunted buildings myself. So so at the end of that 10-month project, they said, well, what can we do for you? And I said, oh, you're going to let me have this place. They said, yeah, go ahead. They gave me a letter and they said, yeah, have at it. And that was the probably the craziest building out of the bunch. And I just
Right.
loved doing
Right. Well, that particular building in Ghosts, I don't know if you can talk about it. The mansion that
that.
is that. Did you say that was one of Canada's most haunted locate, like known to be one of Canada's most haunted locations?
That one, it, I don't think it was known to be
Oh,
haunted.
okay.
I mean, the community knew,
Mm.
the government knew, the security team knew. Um, Outside of the community, I don't know if people knew how haunted it was,
Okay.
but it was a whole bunch of layers of things happening there. Um, even afterwards, and I carry this close to my heart because I just loved it so much. Is After it was all over, and I got an interview with quite a large TV station in Toronto. It was called City TV,
Hmm.
and they had a slogan, City TV everywhere, and that was their slogan. So they said, "You want to do the interview?" And I said, "I'd love to." And so they said, "We're going to do it live from the property," and I just chuckled to myself. So they sent their big rig truck down there with all their satellite uplinks and everything else, and I was laughing because uh, you it that type of equipment just doesn't work on that property.
Yeah.
Even though there's a cell phone tower across the street, you have all the access to your satellite and everything else. And they got there, they couldn't get a connection. So we had to go to the studio to do it. And unfortunately, I upset them because I said city TV everywhere except the Fusion Center. But
Seriously.
sometimes I say stuff I shouldn't say. That was one of my favorites.
Well, that's what was so astonishing about this location was, I mean, that too, like all of the electrical malfunctions
Yeah,
that people would have there. But it was just such a high amount of activity,
yeah,
period, and, in addition to that, like, a lot more that you guys didn't even know you were getting until, after the fact, when
yeah,
you reviewed the tapes, you're like, "Wow," like, things were happening constantly,
yeah.
so it's just really, I don't know, just astonishing to me. What,
It was.
uh-huh.
No, it was. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let my audience know, like, what kinds of, evidence were you able to capture at this place? And you can talk about the farmhouse as well if you want to kind of include that all in
Right.
one. But what kinds of evidence and experiences were you having?
Right. Well, my first introduction and how I fell in love with this property is it was sort of a last minute thing from the city supervisor. She said, "Oh, I got another property. I don't know if you want to see it." And the team was kind of tired because we just finished doing a building for them, and we were wrapping up. Everybody's going, why don't we do it another day or something? I said, no, come on, what's it going to hurt? We'll take a drive over and have a look. So we drove down, and it opened up, came off the road, and it was a long, 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 long tree-lined driveway, and it to this giant mansion on the lake, sitting right on the lake. And you drive up, and you get this feeling, and as you're driving up, the house is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we parked, everybody got out, and we're looking around, and two things happened that hard to explain. But the first was we sort of spread out. We were looking at the house. Everybody broke into little tiny groups, right? Because there was a couple of city people there as well. We were talking to them. The first thing is my brother, he tends to dress all in black. So that's fine. So he's off to the side, and he's looking at the side of the building, and I'm looking at the front of the building. And he calls me. And I looked over and I went, what? And then I realized I wasn't talking to him. I was talking to something because he was standing behind it. Because I could see he smokes and he had a cigarette, and I could see the heater off the cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, what the hell is this? And this thing took off. It was like a cartoon. It moved so fast, and it went behind like a small sapling tree about 4 or 5 inches wide and disappeared. What the hell is that? And he said, did you see that? And the funny thing is, I saw it. It was all black. But he was standing behind it, and he said it was all white. Bizarre. It's like a negative.
Yeah, yeah.
So he came over to our group, and we were talking about it, and everybody's talking, and somebody goes, who's that? And we looked up on the second floor above the doorway. Somebody had moved the curtain to look out. So there's someone in the house. So security scrambles, and they punch in the alarm code, which was armed. There was no alarm on the property. So how they were in there, I don't know. But so we rushed into the house, and I rushed down the hall to where their stairs was, and I looked up, and the window that they had moved the curtain was still swaying. But it was sitting in midair. It was above the stairway. There's no floor. So it was impossible for anybody to stand there to do what we saw from outside. And I turned around, I looked at the city supervisor, and I went, I need this property. And that was the deal.
Yeah. And that was within the first, like, what, hour of being there, and the
First
stuff.
15 minutes.
Wow, wow. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
First
Yeah,
15 minutes.
and
I
then
went
it
home. I
just
couldn't sleep. She said, okay. I went home. I couldn't sleep. I was planning how we're going to do this, what team I needed,
Yep.
the type of equipment we were going to have to use. I just couldn't sleep that night. I was like, this is exciting, to see that much activity. Just like they're not shy. So,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
we got a
they
lot of,
definitely.
yeah, we got a lot of stuff out of that investigation. It turned into, uh, I guess a double murder mystery. And then,
Mhm.
we found that the farm across the road was connected to the mansion. It was all one property at one time, and they severed it and sold it off to a young couple that wanted to build their mansion on the lake. And he was a lawyer. He didn't live long after that. He passed away, had a heart attack.
Mhm.
And the wife stayed there, and then she remarried. Uh, the name of the property got lost in history, and nobody knew, because even the curators and the managers of the museums didn't have the right information. So
Right.
and this is where it can go wrong for investigators. Right? You just take it as gospel. Well, these guys are in the know and they know, so I'm going to run with it. And you take that information, but it was wrong. So I had to do some deep dive and find the actual, right, through genealogy and everything else, and find the true story. And which was good, because I went back to the city afterwards and I said, here's the information. And they went, wow. And they actually went around and renamed the property to the owner that originally owned it.
Wow.
So, which was nice. It was very nice.
Yeah.
It was very befitting. I mean, it's her house. She should have it named after her instead of an ex-husband that was a womanizer and a cheater, So,
Hmm.
yeah. So it's very
Yeah.
important. Don't take things as gospel. Dig into it, look into it. You may find it's correct, but you may also find it's not right, and you can do what you're supposed to do as an investigator or find the truth. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's such a huge part of this work that kind of gets lost in the mix. And people think that they're doing the research and the right amount of research, but this is kind of case in point of,
yeah,
well, another investigator might have only gone so far as to see, okay, well, the city says it's this and this and this, of course, but I mean, you discovered so much more.
yeah,
And furthermore, you were able to kind of piece these puzzle pieces together, not just from that deep dig
mhm,
into genealogy and the records and all of that,
right,
but you were able to confirm what you were finding
right,
based on the evidence that you were capturing, based on two mediums that you
mhm,
had on location,
right.
that they didn't know anything, they weren't front loaded, and
No,
they were able to confirm what you already knew. But that was just it. It was just such a great case from beginning
yeah,
to end. And this was also the location. This was the experiment that I wanted to ask you about.
mhm,
You conducted just it was just a really interesting experiment based on sound, based on
yes,
frequency.
right,
You recall?
yeah.
Are you able to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Okay.
So, I, so when we ran that experiment at the in the ghost book,
Mhm.
that was the second time we ran it. The first time we ran it was in Overshots, which was my first. Uh, so I'll just bring you through it, because the second experiment didn't work, and
Yeah.
I don't know if I was being told. I don't know if you believe in synchronicity or coincidence, but I'll just take you through it quickly here. So Overshadows, I had an idea of building an experiment that I wanted to run. Um, and basically what I wanted to do is see if I could merge two realities, our reality and their reality. And So I had a couple of good friends that worked in a government lab, a technical science lab. And I would go to them and I bring my crazy ideas and I go, how do I do this? And, you know, they start talking in science and I don't speak that language. So they start talking in this, might as well be Latin. And they said, you need to do this, 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 this. I said, okay, so now let's go through it in English. What do I need? Okay, so you need a frequency generator, you need a preamp, you need a couple of speakers, and then here's the math for the setup, right? Because you have to have the speakers exactly proportionate to the house at a specific distance to create the standing wave. I said, okay, this is great. So I took all the equipment, I borrowed some of the equipment. They would let me borrow the frequency generator from the lab, signed it out, they tested it, worked great. So I went to the place, I said, okay, who am I gonna have here for the experiment? So my brother came, a medium came, and I needed a skeptic. I need somebody that would, like, this is nonsense.
Right.
So I knew a guy, he actually ran a paranormal, he was a magician, he ran a paranormal show. He could fake anything, basically. And I said, okay, this is the guy. So I asked him, I said, you want to come? He said, yeah. His name was Scott McClellan. So he said, sure. So he came. And so I set all the equipment up and everything. I turned it on. So basically what I was trying to do was create a standing wave in the main floor of the house at this particular frequency. And so we did this, and we waited a few minutes, and you could hear it working. And then the house sort of came alive. We heard creaking, footsteps, whispers, and the air sort of filled up with almost like a soot floating in the air, black soot. It was really bizarre. And then there was heavy pounding coming down the stairs. And then all hell broke loose. And Scott was the first guy out the back door, and then followed by my medium and my brother. And I'm like, so I shut the machine off, and so I caught up to them, and I stopped. I said, Scott, what's going on? What are you doing? He says, I'm out. And I said, but you're my skeptic. And he goes, yeah, I'm out. And he went home. So we regrouped, and the three of us went back. The house seemed okay. Tore the equipment down, and I didn't want to poke the bear anymore that night. So fast forward to the place in Mississauga, the old mansion. I wanted to run that experiment again. So I went into in the lab. It was a Friday. I'm going to borrow the frequency generator. I went in. I said, the guy's name was Lester, great guy. I said, can I borrow that? He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to try my experiment at this other house. He said, okay. So plugged it in, tested it all. They turned the machine on, and they have a radio running in the lab, AM/FM radio. And so he turned, as soon as he turned it on, the radio, it was a radio station, Q107, and it started playing Highway to Hell on the radio. And he looked at me, and he gave me this strange look, and he just shook his head, and he said, okay, he shut it off. He says, everything works, here you go. I signed it out, went away. And so I tried to run the experiment at this house, and got there, set it all up, turned it on, and the LED wouldn't work. So without the LED, I couldn't find the frequency I needed. So it was a scrub. It's like, oh man, this is. So Monday I took it back. The game man, I was, disappointed. I said, Lester, it didn't work. He said, we tested it. Didn't work. LEDs fried or something. It just wouldn't display. So he plugged it in, turned it on. The LEDs, bright red, there they are. The radio. Now, this is synchronicity or a coincidence? I don't know.
Yeah.
it was a banner weekend for ACDC because Hell's Bells started to play on the radio. And he said, maybe you're not supposed to do this. I said, well, maybe not, but here we are. So it worked the first time. It's just I wasn't allowed, or apparently not allowed to do this, or wasn't allowed to do it in that house, or I don't know what happened, but it's
Yeah. Well,
unfortunate.
and
I still have the
it
machine here. It was eventually donated.
oh,
Yeah.
wow. Have
Other
you
company.
attempted to use it again?
Not yet. Not yet.
No. Okay.
I'm still pondering the whole. It's been a long time, and I'm still processing that information, and I'm wondering if I should or if I shouldn't. It's a responsibility of the investigator to investigate, but
Mhm.
you have to you have to pull back once in a while and say, I can, but should I? Um, and when you start looking at all the implications, and yeah, you want to know,
Mhm.
but at what cost? So, I had a
Right.
good friend at the time, and he looked at it and he said, isn't this sort of like biblical? And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, but you're trying to merge the two realities. I said, yeah. He says, isn't there something about all that live and all that have lived on the world standing there at once? I
Mhm.
went, yeah. Okay.
Ugh.
So, yeah. So sometimes you have to pull back and say, yeah, maybe it's not a great idea. Just
Yeah,
because
just
you do
just
it doesn't
just
mean you
because
should.
you can. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I when I read that, I automatically just assumed, yeah, of course it's not working because it's on the property. This is just one more example of electronic malfunction, par for the course for this place. Um,
Well, that's true as well. That is true as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
I had one of the tech guys. He's like Wile E. Coyote. He can build anything out of anything, right? MacGyver kind of guy. And he's got all the gadgets and everything. His car looks like it's out of a James Bond movie. And he's got a watch. It's satellite uplinked, and it updates every 15 seconds or something. And he came
Mhm.
out a few times, and he goes, "My watch isn't updating. What the hell's going on?" I said, "Welcome to Fusion. You're probably not getting an uplink." So he drove to Tim Hortons and updated his watch. He says, "Yeah, it works over there." Yeah, that's just the way it is.
Of
But
course
that
it does.
that house, it used to be called uh, the early '70s and into the early '80s. It was called the Fusion Center, and it's because the government was doing cold fusion experiments.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
believe through some of those experiments, they opened a portal to somewhere
Mhm.
else, to some parallel reality, because there was other things on the property that the actual ghosts were afraid of. But they wouldn't go in the house. These things would not go in the house. They just roamed the property. They were very, very, very curious about what we were doing, and
Mhm.
we would catch them watching us. And they looked like shadow people.
Yeah.
Uh, you could see they were humanoid looking, but no features, just like a shadow person. And even the mediums that we brought there described them as uh, two descriptions: were they were hollow and they were just static. There was
Huh.
nothing substantial about them. They were just staticky and hollow. But what they were, like just some type of entity that roamed around, tried to figure out what we were all about, what we were doing.
Yeah. 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 That's not unnerving at all. Just a bunch of
No,
shadow people running around the ground,
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh. You know what? I am going to ask you further about these figures. You're going to join me backstage in the Patreon after we get done here,
sure.
and we're going to explore these shadow figures quite a bit more because it's been one of my like in top 5 subjects of the paranormal. I'm just fascinated by the shadow figure phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can't wait to ask you about that. Um, you know, uh, along with your return visits, multiple return visits. Oh, wait, before I move on to that, I had a thought. I just wanted to ask you, do you think, along with maybe like the fusion experiments and the things that they were doing there that created this uptick in activity, I was wondering, do you think it might have had anything at all to do with its proximity to the large body of water as well? Because it's right on the lake, is it not?
It can, it could, and both overshadows and the fusion place were both on the lake,
They were
so it
okay.
can, yeah. And water creates a lot of energy, uh,
Okay.
so it can help it along, right?
It can
Because
be like
it's
a conductor
they
of
have that
sorts, right?
source to tap into. What's that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, the just water. Water can be a
Yeah,
conductor of sorts for this type of activity.
yeah, yeah. So they can,
Okay.
they have that a readily available source to tap into to energize them.
Yeah.
You know, random things happen. Like my medium called me and he said, and he doesn't live anywhere near a lake, but it was just a electrical storm. And he called me. He says, "Hey, it's a weird night." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Something just walked through my house." He says, "But my house isn't haunted. I know it's not. But tonight, something walked through my house." I said, "Well, maybe you had a visitor." He says, "I think it had something to do with the thunderstorm, like
Oh.
the electricity in the air. It's very possible." Right? We got a lot of reports during that type of activity. Things tend to ramp up. So I guess that's why they created these devices that put EMF into the air and stuff, right? Electromagnetic fields and stuff. But I don't find they work, but probably not enough energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tends to ramp up stuff like that, or a large body of water. And there was a convergence in the Mississauga mansion. So we had Lake Ontario, but we also had a creek that converged to make an inlet where well the owners of the mansion used to harbor their yacht there. So when you
Mhm.
have that convergence, that's a lot of energy. Yeah. And that's one of the first places I've seen. I think 2 or 3 times now I've seen a spirit that is so physical that I couldn't tell the difference between what it was and a living person.
Hmm.
As we were doing a bit of a film on the grounds, and the film director, another person, and myself. After it was done, we wrapped up. Everybody went home. We were just checking the grounds, make sure we hadn't forgotten maybe that extension cords or whatever.
Yeah.
And the guy out of place completely. It was kind of cool, temperature wise. And this guy was, he had khaki shorts, like safari shorts, shirt, big handlebar mustache, hat, a walking stick. And he came up from the lake. There's nothing there to access the walk along the shoreline or nothing because there's no shoreline. It's all rocky and forested. And he came walking up. He said, "Morning." We all said good morning. We all saw him. We took about 4 steps, stopped, and went, "What the?" And we turned around to look at him, and he wasn't there. And it was about 400 meters to a chain link fence. So there's nowhere that he could have gone.
Right.
But he looked as real and as any living person you might pass in the street. Yeah,
That's the that
bizarre.
activity is it is bizarre, and it's so in your face. And there was just so much activity that you were able to report in these books. It kind of makes me think about, like, I wonder, because you hear about people who never experience any of this stuff in their entire lives. They'll go their whole lives, never see
Yeah.
a no weirdness. Do you think part of this lies on the actual living person? Like, is there something special going on that allows you to perceive this stuff more so? Or is the paranormal just happening no matter what? Like you know, you're going to see it because it's happening.
Well, yeah, I think, well, the paranormal does happen regardless of what you believe or don't believe. But
Mhm.
what I do believe is there's a scale, experience or scale. Just like anything, there's a spectrum, right, from 0 to 100. And some
Yeah.
people will fall in certain areas of that scale. You might be like a medium, uh, or a clairvoyant might be up near the 100 mark of the scale. And then you have people, some of the people I know, they're closer to the zero. Nothing ever happens. They never experience anything. And I think it's
Right.
the way the brain is designed and how it's wired. Uh, for people like myself, the longer I immerse myself in it and go looking for it, and you start to recognize uh, signs and symptoms of the paranormal, you start moving up the scale. You start understanding more and you start experiencing more because, well, you're looking for it, first of all, and you're putting yourself in those locations. I have an older brother that doesn't believe in this stuff,
Yeah.
and yet he's experienced it a few times. He just brushes it off. He came home to his apartment one day and every door in the apartment was closed. And he lived
Mm.
alone and he didn't close the door. So he's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's weird, right? Okay. But he doesn't question it. He doesn't take that further and go, well, what happened? He just goes, well, it's weird. I'm going to have a sandwich. So, you know, so to him, it doesn't exist because it's quick dismissal. Just don't look at it. Don't
Yeah.
question it. Don't, you know, so these things happen. It's how we perceive it and what we do with that information.
Mhm.
If I see something weird and I go, it's a Tuesday, whatever. And so it's not paranormal to me. It's just something really weird happened and I didn't want to deal with it. So I just moved on.
Yeah.
So when somebody asks me, I don't believe in that stuff. So it's really how the brain's wired and how we perceive stuff, and how we're going to deal with it. So
Right. Right. I
I've talked to a lot of different people, and they'll tell me that they don't believe in this stuff, but they'll right after they say they don't believe in it, they'll tell me 4 or 5 uh, experiences they've had. And I'm like perplexed because you just said you didn't believe in it, but your grandmother visited you after she died, and so which is it? I said, it's very confusing to me, but it's just they don't want to believe it.
yeah.
They see it, but they don't want to believe it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just gonna say, I was gonna tack on to what you were saying there that the longer that I do just the show and look into this kind of research and this literature and just the deeper and deeper that I go, yeah, that it feels almost like I become more sensitive to it, and I have gotten very good
yeah,
at seeing the things that are happening now that 5 years ago. I personally would have just brushed off. I'd be like, oh yeah, it's a Tuesday. I'm gonna go get a sandwich. Um, yeah, but now I see the significance of it, and I'm able to, like, I don't know, just see things that I never would have seen before. So, yeah, it's kinda like, you stare into the void long enough, at a certain point, it's gonna stare back.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
I just I see a lot of stuff. I'm not clairvoyant but I'm sensitive to it because I've immersed myself into it for so many years that
Mhm.
I get that feeling now. When I walk into a place, I can, you get that the hair stand up, and you're like, okay, there's something cool happening here. Look into it. And then other places you walk in and go, there's nothing here, you
Yeah.
know. and usually right. Not always, but usually right.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I was talking about this other case this morning with my assistant director. He said, well, it was sort of active, but not really active. I said, well, it's only the first visit. So sometimes the first visit, even though it might be the most haunted place you've ever been, may not demonstrate any activity at all because they're sizing you up. Like, what are they doing? What's that equipment? So they're quiet. We've done that. We walked into a place and got nothing. Went back the next weekend and went, wow, blown out of the water because of the activity. So
Right.
it's, sometimes they're quiet too. They just like, well, what's this guy up to? So they don't do anything. They don't say anything. They don't make a noise. And then once they figure you out, then everything goes wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that when it's a good idea? Because this is something else that I noticed about your investigation style that I don't really see a lot in other folks' investigations, is that when it's a good idea to push record and then leave the area. Because you did this multiple times and you always got
Yeah, and
really great evidence from it. Yeah.
well, we do, and it's from my security law enforcement background, right? Deploying surveillance equipment, and it's really the workhorse of the group because you can't, you're not going to be able to fudge the audio video surveillance. We're going to put it there, and if something happens, it's going to catch it. So we will go into a place saturated with audio video cameras, high quality stuff that's been modified to what we need, and then we'll go for lunch or breakfast or whatever. Just go outside and have coffee and let it work. Because what we found, I mean, years and years ago, are most places are not haunted by one spirit. There's always a multitude of spirits there.
Right.
And they are, like the rest of us, social. And they'll talk. And when they talk, they will sometimes use each other's names. And we're recording all of this data. So we come back, we take the stuff we don't know in real time, of course, but we'll take it. My brother's the analyst, and he'll take it home and he'll analyze it and he'll get all these hits and he'll call me and I have to come over and either look or listen at what's going on. And then we draw our intelligence for our next visit from that data. So now we might have a name or two names or something. So we now know these two people might be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives us a few things to do. What are they talking about? Who are they? What gender? What they were they? So that we can lead to some new questions when we go in. And it also gives me another avenue. I have a couple of names. How are they or were they associated with that property? So now historical research becomes extremely important, which is played out in a lot of cases. One of the books that I'm working on right now is fantastic evidence. Just, we went in, we did this. We got a young boy talking to an older woman. He called her Miriam. He said, Miriam, you're all alive. He said, thank you, dear. And so we had that recording. So now we have her name. So, fast forward a couple of months, and we brought a medium in. And our mediums never know anything. They were not told anything. And she came in and detected this older woman, and she said her name is Miriam. Pretty good evidence. I mean, we have a recording of
pretty good, yeah.
And now her. And then fast forward again, the owner calls us one day and she said, we were doing some work up in the old place, and we took a wall. We had to open up a wall because we were building a bathroom, and they found all this old stuff they used to use for insulation, which was newspapers and magazines back in the day. She said, would you like to look at them? I said, yeah. So we went and looked at them, and these were church magazines from 1905, through 1907. Mm-hmm. And the delivery header on the page there was for Miriam, who used to live in the house. So now you have
Man.
3 sources saying that Miriam's here, including herself. So,
Wow.
I mean, when you talk about evidence, that's real evidence, right? It's a bunch
Yeah.
of pieces that support each other. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
That's that's the point that it gets to, that it's undeniable. And any skeptic is going to come up behind you, and that, they'll always have a reason why it can't be, an excuse why, but that's some undeniable stuff there. Like 3
yeah,
separate sources of the
yeah,
same information. That's
yeah.
incredible.
It was, it's thrilling. It's when you get that, it's just thrilling,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah. I would
It's,
be so excited. Well, I got to thinking about um the people that are kind of left behind in
mm,
these homes. Um, are they stuck there? Is that what's
no,
going on? Is that a
no,
haunting?
no, they're not stuck. That's where they choose to be. It comes down to choice.
Okay.
Um, so I did write a very extensive theory. It's called the memory matrix,
Hmm.
which includes the memory bubble. It's it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts in it. It's a long theory, but in a nutshell, uh, we pass away, and over 3 days, we go through a life review. During that life review, we're looking at everything we did in our life, from birth to death. Whether that death was untimely or goes right to the end. Along the way, you're going to see and experience things that you did that are either going to make you happy or upset you. And you have a choice. So a lot of these spirits we never hear from, along the way, they stop and they see something fantastic. It was maybe the best part of their life, right? They just got married and had a kid, or they were in their 20s up at the cottage partying with all their friends, and they can pick that little slice of time to exist. And it becomes a memory bubble that grows, and you can include anybody you want, living or dead, will exist because you've created a facsimile of them, how they act, react, how they deal with you, and you build your own reality. Now, they're so far removed from us, we never hear from them. The ones we hear from go all the way to the end, and they pick that time, right? And it's usually because they weren't happy about something, somebody did something wrong to them, or they did something bad and they're hiding a secret. Um, so those are the ones we normally find, and they've chosen it. They've
Okay.
chosen this as so. To separate that even further, like John Paul II said before his death, heaven and hell are not specific places; they're what you make them.
Hmm.
And that's what this theory is about. Is you've So I'm 20, I'm having a great time, all my friends at the cottage. That's a slice of heaven. Or I'm at the end here where I've done bad things, or I've had bad things done to me. So I have a story or a secret. That's a slice of hell. Now you're going through all that over constantly, constantly. Um, so you can make choices along the way. Um, and those are the ones right at the end that we find. They're not stuck. It's where they want to be. It's where they've chosen
Okay.
to be. We are our harshest critic. So
Yeah.
because they're there, it's where they put themselves. Nobody's put them there. And this is why I say we don't. I actually fired a medium from the team because she would like to go in and clear houses. We don't do that because you're
Oh.
clearing them from a place they're supposed to be to where. That who gave you the authority to say I'm right and you're wrong and they have to move along? We've
Oh.
actually had an entity on EVP crying because she's, I'm going to clear this place. And she was talking to another spirit crying, where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? It's heartbreaking. So I fired her. I said, "You're out.
Huh.
We
So
can't
that's
we can't assume that we have the authority to do these things."
right, right. So no crossing people over. No, none of that. Don't do that.
Right,
Right? Okay.
right. Unless it's absolutely 100% necessary, like a
Okay.
rescue, like in Overshots. There was a girl, suicidal girl, came back, and she was being manipulated and used by an older spirit that was there,
Hmm.
Edward. Um, and she was starting to, she was a sweet girl, and she was being turned into something not good.
Yeah.
And we brought in a medium from a spiritual church that had to move her on. But we sent her to meet up with family, her grandfather. She had a close tie with her grandfather who was deceased. So we sent her there. We just didn't kick her out of the house. Um, but only those type of extreme circumstances should we be doing that, because, you know, I go back to the old party idea. And that's, you know, the parents are out. So the kids call their friends and they come over and they're having a crazy party in the house.
Hmm.
And then the parents come home and they go, "Everybody out." So who listens? All the polite ones. "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm out." And all the kids leave, except that one brooding, miserable guy that's tougher than everybody else, standing in the corner and nobody notices. Now everybody's gone. What do you think's going to happen? So it's the same thing with spirits. There's good and there's bad. There's usually a balance. If you say you go into a house and clear, you're clearing all the ones that listen to you, agree with you. Sure, okay, we'll go, no problem. Then you leave.
Right.
But what do you do with the bad ones that haven't listened and refuse to go? Now
Yeah.
who's minding the store now, and where's the balance? So we usually get a call after that's happened. "Oh, we had the place cleared and now it's crazy. It's gone out of control." Well, I can't ask them to come back because I don't have that ability. So now we got to deal with these problem ones. So it's a mess.
Yeah.
And you know, these people roam the countryside, clearing buildings and clearing houses, and have no idea or responsibility for what they're doing.
And and is that when you end up with like poltergeistic activity? Is those kind of darker, maybe more negative, stubborn ones? Is that poltergeist?
Well, people can call it poltergeist. I have a problem with the poltergeist thing. I'm working on that theory right now. Um,
Oh, okay.
Poltergeist is, to me, is more of a thought form, or a tulpa that's gone out of
Hmm.
control, or maybe the originator is passed away and lost control of it, and it's out there roaming, and it causes
Oh.
all kinds of trouble. Rather than because I've seen places that are like Fusion, boarded up for 10 years, not a kid for 10-mile radius, and
Hmm.
we're seeing poltergeist activity.
Yeah.
So where is that coming from? It doesn't fit in either the theory that they've sold us, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm sort of stuck on this poltergeist idea. You know, it's like having two children, and you bring them to a friend's house and go, "Oh, this is my child, and this one's my brat." You know, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, they're saying no self-respecting ghost is going to push people or move objects or cause a fire.
Right.
Well, I hate building little silos because, you know, as people, we like to build little compartments and put things neatly in there. It
Hmm.
doesn't fit. I hate doing that. A ghost is a ghost is a ghost. Some are good, some are bad. Some get frustrated like we do. Sometimes they're angry.
Yeah.
Uh, and emotion plays a huge part in manifestation and action and reaction. So, you know, that's the catalyst is emotion.
Yeah.
The uh, more emotion they put into it, the more they're going to manifest. the deeper they're going to manifest. This is how you can trick a spirit into manifestation, into something you can in fact actually see, is by working with them on an emotional level, right? Because it's the one thing they have is memory. And if you know enough about the spirit and you can tap into their past and their background and what might be emotional for them. And this is, we're putting psychology back into parapsychology. We're working with the mind. And if we can, sort of push those emotional buttons on a subject that occurred within their lifetime that is emotional to them, that'll raise their emotional energy, and they can't help it. The higher that emotional energy comes, the more they're going to manifest. They can go from a misty form to a solid form, depending on the energy.
Huh. Okay. Wow. Wow. Richard, I could talk to you about this stuff all freaking day. I really just enjoy the way your mind works and just such great ideas about this stuff. And I learned a bunch of new stuff today. I thank you so much for
Well,
it. This hour, can you believe it? Look at the recording time. This hour flew by.
I know.
Um,
Wow.
I have so much more to ask you. I will have to have you back on at some point when you are available. Let's quickly let's veer and go into our final questions, final thoughts, and then we'll close it out here. So I only have a couple for you here. I was just curious. One of your final questions is just how your methods and approach to investigating changed over the years. Like what did that trajectory look like? Like did you begin with set in stone like thoughts about it, and then by the end, 40 years later it's totally different? Did it change at all for you? What's that look like?
Well, it changed in the sense that when I started, I was doing this before it was cool, and long before there was digital, long before internet.
Yeah.
We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have all this technology. So when I started, it was paranormal Stone Age. We were using cameras that you had to go get the film developed. If you could afford it, you were using handheld cameras that used a Super 8 film. You were using baby powder. I mean, I'm not disparaging the old ways, because some of them still work, and we still use them today, like the baby powder trick. We used magnetic tape instead of digital. So it did evolve. The technology evolved. Not a lot of the technology is good stuff, but some of it's really good. The fact that I don't have to pay $400 or $500 for developing all this film, because you take 300 or 400 shots at a location every night, it would get really expensive. So I love the way that evolved. Yeah. But when you look at analog recordings and digital recordings, we're still finding that the analog works better. Where I've had a tape recorder and like a micro cassette tape recorder and a digital recorder side by side, and I've had EVPs on the magnetic tape, not on the digital.
Wow.
Which I don't understand, because they're within inches of each other. They should be detecting the same phenomena, but they're not every time. So,
And that makes you wonder too, like how much are people missing because
yeah,
they rely solely on digital and they don't know what they're actually getting. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. Okay. Okay.
yeah. But that was
Well,
just, it was just a test. It was just a test. Somebody said, "Oh, I wonder if this works better." Okay, let's test it. We tested it.
yeah.
And that's how you do it. It's just, you come up with a crazy idea, test it, See if it works. Most of the time it doesn't work, but when it does, then you got something to talk about.
Awesome. All right. Just one more final question for you. What is the biggest mistake that you are seeing new investigators making?
New investigators?
Mm-hmm.
I think going in unprepared, right? If you go in to make communication and you have some idea of the history, prepare thought invoking questions. I see a lot of them just go in and it's the same standard stuff. I mean, these poor spirits are probably bored out of their mind because it's the same question over and over and over, right? Oh, are you here? Can you show me a sign? What's your name? What date is it? But get into some deep-seated questions. What is it like where you are? Give me it. Are you cold? Are you hot? Like, do they feel temperature? Find out what it's like to be a spirit and what are they experiencing? Because even spirits can, believe it or not, experience the paranormal. People don't realize that. And they'll tell each other. It was creepy. I just saw, you won't believe what I saw. Well, that sounds normal for us, but it sounds really weird coming from one spirit to another spirit.
Right.
Right. So they're experiencing weird stuff as well. So, and that's a whole other area to start investigating. It's, the thing is we go in with certain questions, expectations, I guess. And we ask those questions. But I think where the mistake is being made is when you come out thinking you have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you get to ask a question and you get an answer, you should have 10 more questions.
Yeah.
You should never come to the end and say, I know it all, because you can't. There's no way. For every question you have answered, you should have or build another 10 questions. How did it work? How did they do that? There's always another question. So it's perpetual. You're always going to have to move forward and work this out, right?
Yeah, yeah. Just like this conversation today. I've ended with you, Richard, with 100 more questions. But that will be it for today. To be continued. Why don't you tell folks where they can go to learn more, where they can buy your books?
Yeah, sure. You can check me out at my website, thesearchergroup.ca, or you can email me at richard@thesearchergroup.ca. Look me up on Facebook. And if you're interested in my books, you can go to Amazon or any good bookseller should be able to get them for you. And or just Google me, and I should pop up.
All right. And to close out the episode, why don't you leave my audience with any final thoughts, words of wisdom, or a piece of advice?
Oh, God. Wisdom. I'm still working on that part. You know what? I think one of the most important things an investigator needs to have is a sense of humor. Because if you go into a place without that sense of humor and things start to happen and you get into high strangeness, it's going to take a toll on you, and it can get very serious. That toll can cause all kinds of problems, right? With mental health issues as well, because you get depressed and you start realizing the situation they're in and stuff like that. But you need to keep a sense of humor, and it doesn't hurt to laugh at stuff. So, keep that in mind.
Wonderful. All right. Paranormal investigator and researcher Richard Palmisano, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and thank you so much.
Major gratitude to Richard for coming on the show. Learn more about him and the Searcher Group at the links that I have provided. After this interview wrapped, I did indeed jump backstage with Richard, and we had a really interesting chat about shadow people. If you wish to catch this and many other backstage guest chats and enjoy early access to these episodes, you can do so by going to patreon.com/ParanormGirlPod. Join any one of the 4 tiers and get access to all kinds of extra content and perks like no ads. Ooh, yes. My new patrons also receive a very special shout out on the show. For instance, today, I would like to shout out my squatchy brother and supporter extraordinaire, Dwayne, who recently joined my top tier, and he is top tier for doing so. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I am so glad to have met you this season and have really appreciated all of your input and our chats on social. And I very much look forward to seeing you at Squatchfest, sir. Thank you sincerely, Dwayne. Your support means so much to me, man. But wait, there's more. Brenda H. also joined my top tier, aka the Paranormal Investigator tier. How apropos for this specific episode. You have my utmost gratitude for becoming a patron and showing your support in this way, Miss Brenda. Thank you so much for your listenership and for contributing to the PGP cause. Now, one major perk of joining the Paranormal Investigator tier is receiving your very own Paranormal Girl t-shirt, courtesy of my chaotic efforts with the show artwork on the front, courtesy of artist David Linnebury's incredible and original artwork on the back, and courtesy of Boondoogle Printing for, printing the shirts. So Dwayne and Brenda will be receiving those items to enjoy and to wear at all of their upcoming high fashion functions. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, be sure you give a high score on any listening platform or do the thumbs up, subscribe, and notify me boogie on YouTube. And follow the show on social at Paranormal Girl Pod. That is a wrap for today's episode, but never fear. Y'all know there's more where this came from. So I will see you guys Tuesday. Until next week, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.